Because it doesn't seem that our internet connection doesn't seem to be bad. Is there any way I
I
can
don't
check my
think
stream health in Ecamm?
it doesn't seem to be an internet connection problem.
Oh,
It
okay.
looks like
Oh,
you're streaming on. We got a little streaming here going on
yeah, I
YouTube
saw that, and now it's buffering
for a
again.
couple seconds.
I saw that.
It doesn't seem connection problem.
Okay.
It looks like you're streaming on. We got a little streaming here going on YouTube for a couple seconds.
Everybody, sorry about this. If you can hear me. Yeah, I see it happening.
Why don't you try dropping me? Why don't you try dropping me and seeing if that
Disconnecting the Skype call?
Yeah, I'm gonna hang up
Okay.
and see if that makes any difference.
Okay.
Why don't you try dropping me? Why don't you try dropping me and seeing if that
Okay, so it's now me by myself.
Yeah, hang up.
And let's see if that's doing any better. So I think I'm back. Let's see if that's doing any better. That seems to be a bit better. Hey, folks, I'm all by myself now. How are y'all doing? So I think I'm back. All right. Hey, folks, I'm all by myself. What are we? We're 16 minutes in. That's so far. It would appear that our grand experiment of using free tools for webinars is challenged. And I think I'm going to say that it's challenged right now. But we're going to figure out exactly what happened because this surprised the heck out of us. But so you know, we had Glenn on with us, and Glenn Aspasla is one of the creators of one of the tools that we're using of Ecamm Live. And he understands the whole back end of the streaming stuff. And he says it wasn't my connection, that there's something else that was causing us issues here today. So that's what we were doing. So I wonder should I try and bring you back on, Glenn? You think should I bring Glenn back on? Shall we try it? Let's give it a try. I'm going to give it a try. Here, Glenn, I'll give you a call and see if that works. So the way that it works with the tool that we're using here is we use Skype for that connection. So let me just get Glenn back on and bring him into the call. And it seems to be still streaming here. Maybe he doesn't want to come back on after that experience. Hey, Glenn, how you doing?
Hey, Steve.
Okay, now I can't hear you. There we go. Good. Feed here so that we don't have crosstalk. All right, so I'm going to have to trust that it's feeding through now. Oh, it just had an issue again, did it? Sorry, go ahead, Glenn.
It seems to be an internet connection problem.
The live control room up on my notebook, and it says the stream is okay. So it looks like we're doing okay. And we have 231 people on board, and it looks like it's running fine. I can't see it, but I'm going to trust that YouTube's analytics are telling me that it's streaming. So hey, Glenn, how you doing?
Pretty good.
Welcome to hosting a live webinar. This is something that we'll figure out at the end. We'll try and figure out exactly what had happened.
Oh, some people are commenting that it's starting to break up again. The stream's starting to break up again.
Damnation. Darn nation. This is not good. This is not good.
Let me disconnect here. See what happens.
You're going to disconnect again? Okay, so I'm on my own. All right. So this obviously, it's still saying that the primary stream is okay here. I'll just, but it's working fine for me lately. Good. All right. Well, we're going to try a few different things out, and we'll see. Hey, Caitlin, how are you doing? Caitlin's way out in, like, the Caribbean, so we should be. And Phyllis is there. I hope you figured out how watch a lot of YouTube Live, so I know it works. Well, I know YouTube Live works, Phyllis. For other people, just not for me at this particular time. I'm wondering if it's just because there's so much pressure online, although Glenn was saying that it's not. So here was our plan today. Originally, we were planning on, I'm just going to adjust it. Glenn, if you decide that you want to come on, if you think it's safe, you can just choose to come back on. In the meantime, I'll just put me up here so that Farley can join me live on the stream, and we'll get going. So Bob is saying that we're alone. Skype messes it up. Well, okay, we'll just run this by myself, and Glenn can comment in chat, and we'll see how it goes. We'll take it from here, and I'll kind of get back on track, trying to deliver the webinar value that we expect from Webinar Wednesday, and see if we can get through it. Because maybe this connection thing is something that we'll try and work through it, but obviously there's an issue there with and it's probably also me doing the fact that I haven't done an awful lot of the live streams to YouTube. So that's it. So we're up. So what I'm going to try and do. We're going to try and do the same things that we do on our normal webinar. So so that actually starts way back when we were registering people for the webinar and doing all of the same touch points going along. So what I'm going to do today is I got a little bit of a slideshow to share with you. We'll go through the content. I've got 2 videos. I've broken the video into 2 parts that we're going to stream. So we're going to try and deliver, as we normally do, a hybrid webinar. Now the difference is we don't upload the videos to YouTube or to another service. They're going to be streamed from my system here. But theoretically, the system that we're using handles the streaming video more elegantly than I have experienced in the past. So we're going to see if the video stream works as well. And after that, we will do Q&A just like normal, and we'll see how it all pulls together. Now, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to go first of all to my slideshow here, and there we go. And here I'm going to select the scene, which is, there we go. So now you should be getting my little slideshow scene here. So good. So now the tool that I'm using here is Ecamm Live for doing the broadcast. Obviously, we're going to YouTube Live as far as the settings go. So those are the tools that we're using. So let's talk about what I wanted to cover today. So first of all, I wanted to set expectations, which we've already managed to massively undershoot. We're going to talk about delivery options and then the results for delivering a webinar. So the measuring stick is, what do we do with normal webinar tools? Like when I use a Webinar Jam or a Zoom or a GoToWebinar, what happens on those services? What do they provide that we've needed to recreate here if we're going to try and deliver webinars, the same value to webinars, and using free tools? So there's, first of all, the permission and registration. That's the getting your permission to remarket to you later, getting your email registered so that it's not just a live stream that people just jump on ad hoc, but indeed there's some sort of a marketing benefit to having the registration and the intent that comes along with that, with people registering and the communication that happens. Then there's the onboarding process, getting you to the webinar itself and viewing the webinar on whatever system you happen to be on. And all of you managed to navigate that already. Then there's the actual live delivery, where we've obviously run into a few hiccups today. And then there's the other measurables that we have in it, such as the chat and the different assets that we want to deliver within the webinar, such as live streaming a video or incorporating a video asset, perhaps doing polls or calls to action, downloads. How do we manage those things when we don't have the webinar tool to facilitate it all? Then the repurposability and the recording, what we take this content and how we can use it and leverage it later on. Because every week with Webinar Wednesday, we leverage that content quite a bit. First of all, we send out replays to people who weren't in attendance, and then we take that asset and we turn it into our own webinar archives and make it available for later broadcast, for the use of our patrons. So there is all of that we have to kind of try and recreate in this live webinar test as well. And then how do we manage the communications follow-up with our community? Again, the webinar tool will automatically send out a replay notice and any follow-up emails that we determine. We have to rebuild that within our own system. So we're going to begin with talking about the permission and registration, why that's so important, why this is so important. The entire enrollment process of getting you to sign up with your email address, put the webinar into the calendar, that is, it might seem a little bit old school, but it's also crucial to online marketing and building an online community and content marketing, because ultimately we need to be building our mail list on a constant basis. And for most of us, a webinar is one of the best tools for building that. And if we do a live stream, we've got no way of knowing who was in attendance and who was participating. So setting up a registration system where people register, you can tag them, and you know what webinars they're attending and what they're interested in is crucial for building your business. Now, I'll walk through the process on how I did it in the demo. I think, in the demo, I kind of take you through the basic process and how we did it. But basically, what's going to happen is we just basically recreated it using existing tools that I already own. So I used Infusionsoft and my website in order to set up the registration module. When I say we're doing free webinars using free tools, it's the streaming service is free. Basically, it's doing webinars without buying a webinar tool. What can we recreate all of the pieces? All of the other pieces, there are other pieces that do cost, but there are already pieces that I already own and that you probably already own. So you have to be able to use your website, your own CRM, your email service, and your email autoresponder. Those are tools that we use to recreate things that were part of the webinar application itself. Now, often we link the webinar application to those other services, but we're just bypassing them in this test that we're doing today. So as far as the onboarding process goes, you do that through your own mail list. It's got to be a manual process, and you've got the costs incorporated there. The live delivery options that you have in delivering a webinar this way are Facebook Live and YouTube Live, and now I guess LinkedIn Live, although we haven't tested it out yet. Now there's quite a difference between the quality of Facebook Live and YouTube Live. That's one thing that you're going to notice, and also the discoverability and how you archive them is going to be different based on each of those platforms, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on as well. In the live itself, we've got in the actual delivery of a live, the things that I wanted to concern myself with delivering this was making sure we had robust chat, which we do. Now, I don't have access to your chat right now in the window that I'm in. That's one slight difference as far as the host goes. He doesn't necessarily have the same interface for managing the webinar, and that's something that's internal that we have to kind of work our way through. But then you've got polls, B-roll. I don't know why I said B-polls. That's a typo. Polls, adding B-roll, incorporating the video, downloads, and CTAs. So we'll be kind of touching on all of those as we go along. And then recording ends up being hosted by whatever service it is that you're on. Facebook Live records it, YouTube Live records it, and then it's how you repurpose it afterwards. So what I think I'm going to do right now is I'm going to escape out of this, and I'm going to go back into my main video feed here. There it is. Good. And what I'm going to try and do now is I'll be able to see the chat as we go along. But the next kind of stage in it, after you've done a slideshow, you've done a warm-up, whatever you're doing with your audience, is we are going to try and roll some of that video that I pre-recorded yesterday on the entire setup and onboarding process. So you up for that? Okay. While that's going on, I'll be here in chat, and we will we'll see how it goes. So here's our first video that I recorded. Fingers crossed, I'll be in chat. Okay, obviously the biggest difference between a live stream and a webinar is the exclusivity, the intent of a webinar, the fact you have to register for a webinar. And from a business perspective, the registration, the fact that people register for our webinars is crucial for the list building properties of webinars, community building, permission-based marketing, the fact that we want to actually do business with the people who register for the webinar. So typically speaking, all of the webinar packages that you use have a registration and an opt-in module that allow you to have a landing page where people can go enter their email address, their name, and then it sends them an email with a link that will give them access to the webinar. So this part of the process is crucial because it involves both the permission-based marketing aspect of webinars and the onboarding, the beginning of the onboarding process, which is getting people into the webinar at the appointed time, at the right space. So this is something that we have to reinvent ourselves if we want to indeed do a free webinar, if we want to use the free webinar tools such as using Facebook or YouTube for the actual delivery of the webinar. So this is where we actually kind of diverge a little bit from, we can't go completely free at this point because we have to use an email tool of some sort in order to communicate with our community, and we have to have some sort of a registration tool. So I use, for the most part, you probably have tools in place already. If not, you're already considering purchasing those tools. So the tool that I'm going to use in this particular case is Infusionsoft that you ended up using to register for the webinar already. And I'm going to show you the process that we went through in order to rebuild what that registration module might look like in a webinar package. So here's my Infusionsoft installation that you see, and I'm recording this on Tuesday, the day before we're live now. And at this point here, there's 690 people that have registered for this webinar, and more people are registering as we go because we just sent out an email a little while ago to invite more people to invite you to join us. So that's the process that we're going through right now. So what I had to do is I had to create an opt-in form, a registration form that we could put onto our landing page that would allow you to register. And you all went through the process of registering for it. So let me show you how we did that. In Infusionsoft, you can create something called a campaign. Now, the campaigns are basically email sequences that can be very elaborate or very simple. In this particular case, it's going to be a very, very simple campaign. And here it is right here. And you can see that it has 692 active contacts. That's the number of people that you saw on that homepage. That's the number of people that have registered for this webinar right now as of the recording of this demo. If I go in and I take a look at this campaign, don't be intimidated by what you see here as far as the tools and the switches and all of that sort of stuff. All of the steps that I'm going to do right now, you can recreate in a wide variety of different ways. If you use a tool like MailChimp, or if you use ActiveCampaign, or any of the others, you can quickly create opt-in forms that you can embed on websites that will allow you to identify who wants to attend your webinar, and then you create an email that goes out to them that tells them where to show up and what to do as far as logging into the webinar, and it documents that communication so that you can follow up later on with other follow-up emails with your resources, etc. So this is what the campaign looks like. The web form is your email address and your email address and your name. And if I double click on this, you can see that it's a simple little form here that with almost no formatting, that just has your first name and email address. This is the raw mechanism that allowed you to register for our webinar. If we go back, that form leads into a tag. What happens is when you sign up for the email, when you sign up for the webinar, I then put a tag on you, on your email address that says, you've registered for webinar Wednesday number 86. And I store that within Infusionsoft. That is the mechanism that allows me to identify you as a registrant for this webinar. And then I added another process here, which is to send you a registration email. So as soon as you've registered, wait at least 3 minutes, just a nice amount of time for everything to kind of process, and then send you this email. And if I double click on this, it will open my email editor and it will show you the email that you've already seen. You received this when you registered, and here it is right here. Please make sure to mark on your calendar the time of the webinar, and here is the link. This is the link that we are now watching here on YouTube. Now, how did I create that? I will show you that in just a few moments. I want to finish this email sequence through, but this is obviously a big part because this is the destination where we're actually hosting the webinar and the live stream. So this email is what you received right away when you registered, or within 3 minutes of when you registered. But then I had to set up a second sequence because typically speaking in your email software, when you set up and people register, they get the email address, they get the email telling them about the details of where to go. And sometimes there's even an embedded link that will allow you to automatically add it to your calendar, which is a little bit more sophisticated, but they're now in the process and ready to go. But we always send a reminder email last minute. And usually the email software, our webinar software facilitates this We send a reminder email in the last 30 minutes or hour or even 15 minutes before the webinar to remind people the webinar is about to start, because people quite often need a reminder, especially if they've registered a couple of days in advance. So I created that sequence as well, called Last Minute Reminder, and this is what you received just a few moments ago. And I set this up to run at a specific time. So we can set timers in all of our email tools. We can set a timer in place that says send this email at this time to the person. And that email is very similar to what the original email was, but it's just with a different title. That's it. Don't forget, we're going live shortly, and here's the link for you to watch it. And so I put that same link that I just showed you a few moments ago, the raw link. We put the link in here, and this is, some of you or many of you probably came to the webinar by clicking on this link. So that's how we set up our email funnel, the sequence of emails that follow up with the registrant. And I identified you all through the tag, and that tag then allowed me to send multiple emails to you. The first, just a single registration, letting you know exactly when and where to show up, and then a reminder of where you should come to show up as well. Now, how did I get that form, though, onto our webpage? That's the second part of this puzzle, and then the third part will be how we created the link on YouTube. So let me now show you how we got this form, the form that I just showed you, on our webpage. And for that, what we will do is we will go to, actually I'll just call up the actual page that you've got, which is, this is our registration page right here. So this registration page here I created in WordPress. We created this in our WordPress, and there's all different sorts of themes and different sorts of tools that you can use to create your WordPress account. But what we do is we have a standard registration page, and this is simply an embed code. This is something that was dropped in. Now, in our case, Liz formatted it to make it look like it fit properly on our page, but that is created. If we go back into Infusionsoft here, I'm just going to go back to where we were here, and I showed you let me just go back into the sequence itself, this web form. Within this, when I created this web form, which I identified to set up for you to register, if we go into the code settings here, we can see that we can have little embed codes, HTML unstyled or HTML code, which allows me to take this code and it's just then placed as code on your web page. If you don't understand this process, it's okay. Your web designer does understand the process. And there might be an even easier way for you to do this depending on what WordPress theme you're using. Some of them will automatically integrate with your email service provider to create these codes and these forms for you automatically. For example, when I used to use Optimize Press as my WordPress theme, it would link directly with Infusionsoft and automatically create the form. So you can do it as an automatic process or as a built process. But the bottom line is that we've now recreated some of the most important functionality that was built in to our webinar tool, just using our email software and our website. Is we've created the registration page and the follow-up email sequence, all by using our own tools, which are already existing. Now, these tools are not completely free, but they are tools that we are already paying for, so there's no additional cost to setting it up this way. The last part of this process is setting up the actual webinar itself, this live stream delivery, and let me show you that right now. Okay, this tool that you see right here with me mirrored in the window is Ecamm Live. This is the broadcasting tool that I'm using to actually deliver this webinar right now. Now, it is, again, not free. It is currently around $80 to purchase Ecamm Live, although they're in a few days or weeks shifting over to a subscription model as they upgrade the service, which is quite exciting, and we can talk a little bit more about that later if we have time. But the bottom line is this is where I'm actually broadcasting from. This is what I'm using as my broadcasting tool. And again, this is a tool that I already had and I already own because I use this for doing all of my live streaming. Now, the process of setting up a future stream, like planning a webinar delivered as a live stream, is done you can do it in two ways. You could go into Facebook or you could go into YouTube and you can schedule an upcoming live session manually through their tools, or you can do the same thing here within the Ecamm Live toolkit here by creating a new scheduled live. Now, you have to be careful. You have to make sure that you've chosen the right destination. Here's all of our options. I can go to Facebook, Periscope, Twitch, or YouTube. all services that I can deliver live streams to using Ecamm. I'm going to leave it on YouTube. It's connected to my account already. It'll ask you to connect to your account so it knows it's the right account. And then what I do is I create, this is the one that we're on live right now. This is the one that I already created. But I went new scheduled live, and then I entered, going through this dialog box, the information about our upcoming webinar, the webinar that we're on right now. Now, I can do all of the scheduling here within Ecamm Live, but let me show you what it looks like over on YouTube itself, because what happens is YouTube creates a event page which we see right here. So this is what you would probably be going through if you were to create it manually on YouTube. This is the event which we are in right now, and it's got many of the same aspects that a traditional YouTube video has, as far as all of the different settings and information that's attached to it, but it's designed to be streamed live. So let me show you the main touch points in here. It has a title. It has a time that it's starting, and it will start to feed automatically at this point. Because I created it in Ecamm Live will send the necessary video information through to YouTube at the appropriate time, and all of the broadcasts will come together, which is what we're watching right now. So this entire stream is pulled together through this interface. You can go in and you can change a few settings to modify a few things. You can turn on and off live chat, which we, of course, are always going to leave on because we are a big fan of having chat. You can also go down here, and this is quite useful. You can create additional promotions. You can ask it to promote it to your channel, because this is now connected to my YouTube channel where I've got hundreds of thousands of subscribers. So one of the kind of nice benefits of streaming a webinar in this format is you get some additional viral sharing to your channel if you choose to share it on your channel. Now, there are pluses and minuses to doing that, which we won't go into right now, but you can promote it on your channel page and make sure that everybody who's subscribed to you on your YouTube channel gets access and knows that this live webinar is either about to happen, is live, or you can choose not to promote it at all. You can choose to just use your channel and not tell your YouTube community about it, but just the people who are registered for it. You also have the option to make it an unlisted webinar, which means they have to know the direct URL to reach it. It wouldn't be searchable. So you have some extra different options as far as the discoverability and how widely it's shared in social doing this. Of course, once you launch the webinar, you can also share it in Twitter, and you can share it in Facebook. And depending on what platform, if you're using Facebook, say, to deliver it, you've got additional sharing options there. So there are ways to extend the reach of the webinar once it's going live through the different social platforms that you happen to be on. But this is the business end of the webinar now. This is the live delivery end. This is how we get it streaming to you on YouTube. Now, there are some additional benefits on YouTube. YouTube streams at a much higher quality, typically speaking, than does Facebook. It also records the entire webinar for you so that you can then either publish it directly to your YouTube channel immediately or download it for other purposes. Now, when I do my webinars, I record what I call a wild copy of the webinar at the same time. I always have a notebook beside me where I am logged on as a guest, as the same as you are right now, and I record the entire webinar screen. I do this for two purposes. One reason I do it is so that I can monitor the feed. So at least I know if there's a problem coming from my upload, because I can see it right here, even if I haven't been notified by other services that there is issues with the feed. So I can see how it's streaming, at least to a certain extent. The other reason I do that is so I can record the entire screen with the chat scrolling through in real time, so that I can make a YouTube recording of that and I can play it back so you can view it kind of at double speed and still see the chat. That's something that's not quite as important with this technique as it was with our previous webinar techniques, but there's still some value, I think, in recording it and having a second computer running at the same time. So this is all of the pieces that webinar tools deliver for you that we've had to replicate in order to deliver the same value. Now, the value that we're talking about delivering here is mainly to us, the webinar content creator, because I want to know your email address. I want to remind you so that you can attend. I want to have control over the fact of who attends and who doesn't attend the webinar. All of those All of those key points are taken care of by us using our own email software, our own website, creating a landing page, opting you in, and then tracking you through the process and communicating with you through our email tool, driving you to this live broadcast, which is happening on our account on YouTube. So we've done, I think, as far as this part of the process goes, we've done a pretty good job of replicating what happens in a webinar tool. Does it take longer than it would in a webinar tool for me to create this? It does the first time. I think once you get into a system, there'll be a marginal increase in the amount of things that you have to do just because you have to open multiple applications to put everything together. But it's not an egregious amount of time difference as far as setting up to deliver a webinar using our own MacGyvered process versus the made-for-you process that happens within webinar tools. This first time, it took me a lot longer because I had to figure out each step of the way. If I was to do this again next week, I think it would be a far smoother and easier process. All right, I am back live now. So that was all pre-recorded, and now I've jumped back live. That was pretty good. I like that. I'm happy with it. The video might have been out of sync a little bit. The audio issues were completely mea culpa. I'm tracking down which is my bad cable I've got a cable that occasionally crackles in my audio setup, and I'm too lazy to re-record the segment when I had that little bit of interference. So my apologies. Sorry about that. So that was not too bad. So just so that you all have the picture, what I'm going to take you through next, I've got another little video in our B-roll to show you the eCam setup, how I set this up. So let me talk to you about the system, because make sure that you have all of the pieces in place one more time. I've got my normal webinar setup as far as hardware and software goes. So my normal webcam, my normal microphone, and I'm running from a Mac Pro. I've got a hardwired connection, so I've got a good, robust connection. I was really quite surprised that we were having streaming issues earlier because we typically speaking, don't have that kind of an issue. So that's something that we'll definitely be wanting to troubleshoot. The hardware piece, or the software pieces that make this all happen, is we use eCam Live, which is a live streaming tool that has a whole raft of additional features that you can use for live streaming. Now, so it's designed to primarily stream to Facebook or YouTube Live, and to enable it and to create a show when you do a broadcast and not just a stream. So you can incorporate lower third graphics, you can insert video as we just saw, you can bring guests on, although we failed at that through Skype. So there are, it's got a whole bunch of additional features and that make this all very possible. And it also allows you to switch back and forth. You could use multiple cameras. So you could have, if you had two people doing an interview, you could have a two-shot with both of us in the shot and then cut to single shots. So it's a switcher. It acts as a program switcher, allowing us to choose different services. That's how I sent the video through, is I just have it preset as what's called a scene, and then I just hit the keyboard shortcut of Command key 3, and the video starts playing. So I'm about to play the second video, so I'll be hitting Command key 4 in just a moment and sending it through. You can also do screen sharing. So this gives us all of the on-air features and assets that we want as far as delivering content. Where we're short still is some of the things like having a built-in poll. There's no way to have a poll. We'd have to send people off platform to have a poll, whereas webinar packages often have a poll. And I'm going to tell you right now, the biggest issue I'm going to have is I couldn't tell the difference quality-wise between live and pre-recorded. Glenn said that. That's really, and I sense that. I sense that as we switched across. Maybe I shouldn't have worn the same sweater. People wouldn't have known that I was doing the same thing. But I'm going to tell you right now, the biggest issue that I'm going to have, one of the biggest issues at the end, other than the extra work of the process of setting things up, is the limitations of chat in Facebook and in YouTube. Because the webinar tools that I really like to use, that really work for me, engender interaction with the community. Now, the straight-up chat that we've been doing has been fine, and it's good. But there isn't an easy way for you to demark questions for us in the chat so that I can quickly scan through and pull all of the questions out. Now, that's the negative. The bonus is, since we're in YouTube Live, if people wanted to give me money, they could, because Super Chat's active. I'm not asking for money, but if anybody gives me money, that's great. But that's so there's. I don't think that the addition of Super Chat though overcomes the disappointment of not being able to demark questions. And one of the nice things you might notice we do in Webinar Jam is when I'm answering a question, is we broadcast the question to the entire room as a graphic at the same time, which is a really nice touches in a live show. So those are some of the things that are missing a little bit. And money rules, yes, Ecamm is brilliant. They have, and it's getting better. I'm using the beta version, which is soon to be released as they convert into a software as a service platform. And they've got some wonderful new features coming down the pipe, which we'll be talking about very shortly on all of my platforms, because I'm really excited about those coming down the pipe. But let's jump right now, because we lost about 16 minutes in the whole thing, or 20 minutes, I guess, off the top. Let's run the second video. The second video is much shorter, but it's going to show you the setup, not the administrative setup that I just took you through as far as setting up all of the Infusionsoft stuff, but now it's the Ecamm setup. You ready? Okay, here we go with video number 2. Okay, let me show you now the Ecamm interface that we're using to feed this video through right now, because this is replacing the webinar tool as far as the live streaming delivery. So Ecamm Live is designed as a live presentation tool for streaming live through to Facebook or YouTube Live. And we already looked at how we programmed and planned our upcoming delivery. But now once we're in the delivery, let's take a look at how we serve all of the different digital assets, all of our different assets into the webinar. So obviously the video feed you see coming through here is Ecamm has the ability to grab my camera, or also to bring a guest on. Now, how we brought Glenn in as a guest is we bring him in through Skype. Is you create a Skype connection. You first of all call the person on Skype, and then under here, under the camera, is you include the Skype guest. And then we have the option of doing a split screen or putting them picture in picture as far as incorporating them into the feed. So that's how you incorporate guests, live guests, into the call. So they come in through Skype, and their connection with us is through Skype. Now, as far as adding slideshows and other graphics to the webinar, how we do that is just through screen sharing. As we create a screen sharing window, we open our slideshow and we share the screen. One nice feature that's built in here, which typically speaking I haven't seen in many other webinar packages, is the ability here to go picture in picture, which is how you had my image in the screen when we've looked at slides in the past, and how if we do more slides in this webinar now, how you'll see my picture as well when I'm delivering slides. So I just create my slideshow in my slideshow tool of choice, in my case Keynote, and then I play the slides on my desktop, and I share the desktop, and it windows my video feed in, which is a really nice way of increasing engagement. Next is dealing with chat. Now, as soon as you set up, when you create the initial event within YouTube or within Facebook or any of the different platforms, is Ecamm then creates a connection to manage all of the chat here in the chat in the comments and reactions area. So there is a connection going back and forth. So all of your comments are now flowing into this. And here is where I'm reacting to you here and commenting back to you here. Now this is nicely efficient as far as keeping everything in one place, but it doesn't give us all of the exact same functionalities you have in the native chat client, say in YouTube. For example, Super Chat. If people were giving me money in the middle of this webinar, which is a feature that you can do within YouTube. I'm not asking for money here, by the way, right now. But if you were to do a Super Chat, it would come up color-coded in my chat here, whereas in the YouTube comments themselves, it'll be pinned so that you can identify them. In other words, it wouldn't leave the screen for the presenter. So there are a few subtle differences. The biggest difference with traditional webinar packages is here in the fact that we can't easily demark questions and answers. There's no way of saying this is a question and this is not, and then broadcasting those questions the way that some webinar packages do. We use that a lot with Webinar Jam, where you identify a question and then we broadcast the question to the room. We make sure that it appears as a graphic as we're actually answering the question. So that's one more limiting factor. It's a nicety that you can use to create more compelling webinars, but it's not a must-have. It's obviously we can survive without it. Now, the other big difference between a tool like Webinar Jam that we use is how we insert a video, like this video that's pre-recorded that's running right now. With some tools, we're able to upload those videos to an online service such as Vimeo or YouTube, and then stream them as B-roll into the webinar itself. With this live stream tool, with Ecamm Live, we don't have the option to do that, but what we do have the option to do is to preload our videos here into the video window here, into the video option, and to stream it to the community from our desktop computer. Now, it's not streaming our desktop feed, which for example, is the way that Zoom does it, but instead what it's doing is it's using that video as though it were a camera. So it's this exact same quality as you're getting from me on my video camera and microphone when I'm delivering live. It's delivering that video to you through Ecamm. Now, the benefit of doing a hybrid webinar this way, where you have some pre-recorded elements, is you're able to add things like screenshots and all of the stuff that I'm delivering to you right now into a live webinar, which really adds to the value. The downside is if I can upload it, I know that the quality is going to stream through higher. But this is going to be kind of one of the big question points with how well this whole do-it-yourself webinar system works, is what's the quality of this video feeding through right now. So I'm going to be really fascinated when this part of the video is over to see how it all worked out. So those are the pieces. It's pretty easy to manage the webinar. You get used to all of the tools. There's other assets where you can add little animations and sound effects and graphics that are built into a tool like Ecamm Live that allow you to really up the quality of your webinar. But that's something that we'll have to explore at a later time. Right now, we want to find the same base functionality as we get from our traditional webinar tools. And I think I've covered all of the main points now. Okay, that brings me back to live again. That was good again. I like this. You can compose a pretty good show. So just as a former television guy doing live shows, the switcher aspect. A switcher is a tool that allows you to choose different sources, video, audio, graphics, and be able to switch on the fly in a live stream. The switcher aspect of what we can do here in Ecamm is really elegant. And I haven't done an awful lot of live streams. I've done a few. But I could see how using these tools and just spending a little bit of time crafting the format of my webinar, that we could do some really special things. So we give up some things doing a webinar this way, but we gain some things as well as far as the interaction and all of the tools of this live format. Now, one of the things that we gain really massively if you start thinking about delivering your webinars by cobbling together your own system, such as we're doing here, is you get additional viral sharing on whatever network you're looking at. Typically speaking, when you deliver a webinar, the webinar is just on the webinar host package itself, and only those people know about it. But when you do something like we've done here on YouTube Live, when we went to broadcast, we promoted it on YouTube and let people on YouTube that are part of my community know as well. And so we got that extra viral sharing happening. And so that's something that I think over time definitely will end up making a difference. But if we think about all of the things, I'm just going to kind of walk my way through the main touch points that I kind of articulated at the beginning that a webinar package has to have for us, that we have to do. First of all, we need to find a way to enroll people, capture their email address, and get permission to email to them so that we can do our list building perspective of webinars, and also to create the event, to have some intent behind the people who are registering. So they say, I want to attend this, and they put it on their calendar, all of that process. We covered that off using Infusionsoft or any email package that you happen to be using. You can cover that off quite well. It's a process that will take you a little bit of time to set up each time, but once you've done it once, it'll be a format, and you'll be able to do it over and over again, and it'll take less and less time as you go along. I know I made a few little mistakes. I think I made a mistake on the follow-up timer that you should have gotten your 1 hour notice email, and I'm not sure I set the response up right on that. But that's something that you have to make the mistake once in order to kind of learn. That's typically speaking what happens with this stuff. So as far as enrolling people and getting them into your CRM, it's a big check mark. Typically speaking, in our webinar packages, such as Infusionsoft, we have a link. We have a link that'll come straight through, an API that sends the information straight through. So we capture the information very similarly. It's an extra step, maybe an extra 10 minutes per webinar, 5 minutes per webinar, but that's an extra step that we have to do, setting up that follow-up email sequence. So there's a check mark. We can do all of the things we expect to do in the webinar there. The second thing that we were talking about is the onboarding sequence, getting people into the webinar. Now, a webinar package will have a nice waiting room that you can actually market to people and tell them they're waiting. Whereas when we're using Facebook Live or YouTube Live, you're just in the interface of that application itself. And so you've got you're kind of lost as to knowing when it's going to start. All of you in chat went through that, had that experience at the beginning. When we had trouble getting online at the beginning, is you're all left hanging. Am I in the right place? Are we at the right time? And where's Steve? So whereas if you're in a webinar package, you'll see that the webinar is about to start. You'll know there's a little extra level of confidence. So we can't really recreate that, but possibly you can, as you get more and more experience delivering the live webinars, you might add some verbiage to your follow-up email or your reminder emails to let people know exactly that to give them confidence that they're going to be in the right place. And of course, starting on time would be a really good thing to do. Would be a really good thing to do as well. Next, we're talking about the actual online experience of the webinar, what you've experienced. I think as far as the straightforward display of the content and presentation, that in some ways we're farther ahead using a tool like Ecamm or vMix if you're in the Windows world. You're farther ahead than we would be just in the webinar package because we have more functionality as far as what we can broadcast using a switcher app like this than we would in a straight webinar app. The downside is going through Skype, bringing somebody in. That was problematic, but it turns out that the guys have figured out that it's probably due to my ancient hardware that I'm streaming this with a 2010 Mac Pro, which they completely outed me on. And I'm thinking about upgrading my hardware. So possibly that's only an issue for me, but it does bring an extra variable in. Whereas when you're using a normal webinar package, a Zoom or a Webinar Jam, is you're bringing your guests or your co-presenters into that environment, and so they're right within that environment with you. So there's not a second product to use, but Skype is free, and usually it works pretty well, so there's a bit of a saw-off there, but it's not quite as elegant. But as far as the rest of the presentation, sending those videos through, streaming those videos from my desktop, oh my God, so happy with that. I'm just fireworks going off. That was awesome. Incorporating other graphical elements. I don't like delivering slideshows the way that I did here today. I'm going to try and figure out a better way to do that because I feel just because of how the slideshow takes over my screen and you couldn't see it at your end, but I just felt I had less control over what was happening since I couldn't see the chat anymore. So there's got to be a better way for us to deliver live slideshows into a webinar, and I'm going to work on that. So that's a little bit more on the fail side, but still, it got the job done. It got the job done. I just felt like I was flying a little bit blind. I don't think it affected you. It affected me more. We don't have the ability to demark questions, although there was some great suggestions in the chat saying that we can train our community to put a little question mark before. That would help. But it would be still nice to have a chat tool that facilitated the parsing out of questions as we're going along. But the chat's not horrible here. And we do have the upside of the potential of people giving you money if you are doing one using the super chat. So there is that as well. The calls to action, we didn't do any polls, which typically speaking webinar packages have. And there might be a way to roll the polls in. And I imagine YouTube is ultimately going to add those sorts of things to their chat interface. I know they're working on making it more robust, but that's going to take some time for that all to suss out and that all to work. And as far as doing other calls to action of having people register for things, dropping links in the chat is just as efficient as anywhere else. And you have the nice benefit within Ecamm where you can drop graphics to supporting graphics using the switcher aspect to help tell the story of whatever it is you're talking about. Plus, and there's other features that I didn't show you. So for example, I could have 2 or 3 cameras set up here, and I could switch to different cameras that would have like a space for me to do a graphic over my shoulder, the sort of the way you would do in a television network. We can do that kind of thing as well. So there are some benefits from that perspective. As far as the recording of the webinar, I messed up as far as the recording goes just because of all of the trouble that we were having at the start. So I'm going to be relying on YouTube's recording this. I'll see what that's like. But that's going to be pretty much the same as with regular webinars, I would say. Viral sharing of it, it's already uploaded to YouTube and ready to go, although I don't want to share this one. I want to pull it down, edit it, because I want to take out that 20 minutes of dead air at the beginning. So we've got that. We've got that as far as the sharing goes. But the recording, we should be able to repurpose the same ways as we record any other webinar that we've delivered. And the follow-up email sequence is something that we've always done ourselves out of our own email software, so that remains the same. So overall, I would say that this might be a way that certainly is far more viable than we might have thought for delivering a webinar. The issue is you need to have a pretty broad assortment of online marketing skills to pull all the pieces together. In a webinar package, it's all done for you. You just have to learn that one tool, and there are tutorials to walk you through it, and they have support. In this particular case, if you're like me and you can toss a whole bunch of balls in the air and make it all come together and keep those balls in the air and not panic when you have an issue like we had off the start today, then this is a great way to go. But the technical, and I'm not going to pat myself on the back here saying it was so amazing that I did it, but the technical ability to be able to pull all these pieces together, most of a large part of the community doesn't necessarily have yet. So you have to be willing to literally roll up your sleeves and MacGyver the things to make it all work, and trust yourself, and also be of a personality type that when things go a little bit off the rails, you can figure out how to get it back on the rails. And there could be a price to pay with your community. I think most of you, and we still got 200 people on, you know, and have been following us for a long time, and you know that we do try out different pieces of technology to see how well they're going to work. So there's a grace period that I'm going to get because of the work that we've done in the past, that if you're just promoting yourself for the first time to a new community and you had the same struggles that we had at the beginning, they might say, this buffoon doesn't know what he's doing at all, and you could end up losing your credibility with a potential somebody that might be important. So there is that danger as well. So overall, I think that I'm gonna make the quick network call right now, saying I think it's great if you are an advanced online person that has experience in live streaming, and I think that typically speaking, putting webinars together this way is going to work better for people with live streaming experience that want to add more functionality to the live streams, as opposed to somebody who doesn't have all of the other pieces in place, if that makes sense. I hope it does. Now I'm going to try, we're at the top of the hour, we're past the top of the hour. I'm going to keep going on for a little bit of time here and going through your questions. I'm sorry, I haven't been looking at the chat at all while I've been talking, and I don't have April on board with me answering questions. So I'll get you guys to repost some of the questions that you have here, and I'll address them as we go along. I know many of you have to go because it's the top of the hour. So for all of our patrons at Patreon who support us, dottotech is a community-funded channel supported through the generosity of you folks. Thank you so much for being with us today. I appreciate your patience. And hope that you got a lot out of today's webinar and you learned a lot. And for the rest of you, let's stay on, and we'll handle a few questions as we're going along. So let me see if I can pluck out a few questions. Wendy says, what webinar packages are available for beginners? None of them are really for beginners, but as far as ease of use goes, I would say that probably the easiest to use for most people would be a Zoom. That's one that I do like a lot of what Zoom brings to the table. So that would be the kind of the main webinar package I would say to start with. But most of the browser-based ones, such as Webinar Jam, Demio, I really like what I'm seeing from the folks at Livestorm. They've all got wonderful online support and tutorials. And if you're a beginner doing webinars, it's not so much that how easy the tool is, it's you coming up with your format and your skills to deliver the webinar. The tool will morph as you go along and you'll learn the tool. So I wouldn't worry so much about the tool itself as I would worry about your own webinar technique. Our online course, we've got a simple course called Webinar Palooza, which walks through all of the different main platforms that you can test out. So I would encourage you to take a look there. But Zoom would be the one that I would probably recommend most often for people to start with. Okay, does anyone hear water dripping every once in a while? You know what that is? That's my mic picking up there's a ping, audio ping every time that there's a new post. And that's the water dripping. Drip, drip, that's what you're getting. So there we go. Glenn is asking me. He's doing all sorts of self-serving things. Can I see how the graphics work? How to do ad branding? How about a comment overlay? Those are all good things. I'm good. Check out my video on on Ecamm for all of those things. Do become a patron. Great access. Thank you, Fool Crow. That's great advice. I love people who are patrons. They're great support. Is YouTube keeping track of how many people are left? Yes, I can see it. Not necessarily. I'm not sure. The guys might have it here. The feedback on Ecamm. I don't see where I can see how many people are live. But if I'm looking at my feed, which I'm checking here on my notebook, I can see there's still 190 people in the room, and that's on the watch page for me. Live streaming software for Windows, Charlie. We've had it asked several times because Ecamm sadly is only a Mac-only product. But according to everybody I talked to, the best comparable product to Ecamm in Windows is vMix. VMIX is the one that most people recommend, and it's very powerful. How would you do? Jesus asks, how would you do to make evergreen webinars with a free tool? Is it possible? Yeah, you would record the webinar in one of a variety of different ways. You could record it as a screencast as you're doing it, or you could take the YouTube recording, and then you would take that recording and you would put it into another piece of software. We make our webinars evergreen by hosting them in Thinkific in the learning module, but you could also just host them on your own web page as evergreen, and you could do the same gating and having people register their email address before they get to the page. So you could do all of the same sort of MacGyvering together a system that we did for the webinar to create an evergreen webinar from it. Sorry, I should have said Jesus. That's the way that would work just fine as well. Who's phoning me? We'll have to wait. Okay. Good. Kim has asked, is there a PC version of Ecamm Live? So we've gone through that. So that would be vMix. Sylvia, is there an updated version of Webinar Palooza? The Webinar Palooza is now kind of a live course, not live. When I use a new webinar tool and test it out, I add it to Webinar Palooza. So if you haven't looked at Webinar Palooza lately, there's probably some new modules of new tools that I've tested out in there. So I'll continue to update it as we're going along. Am I still using, Rob's asking, Rob Zilstra, am I still using the Logitech C920? No, the camera I'm using here is the Logitech Brio, which is their 4K camera. A little bit more expensive, but quite a nice camera. I quite like it. I think it does an excellent job. So Tom is asking, do you have any good whiteboarding softwares that you use during a webinar? I do a lot of whiteboard live training, but don't want to use something that looks like Khan Academy. Most of the tools have a whiteboarding option, and you could even do whiteboarding here by putting a system together. So first of all, I know Zoom has a good whiteboard. I know Webinar Jam has a whiteboard. But if you screen share from a tool like Ecamm and choose whatever whiteboarding tool you want on your computer, you can make that the display window. So that would be a great way of whiteboarding right within a live stream. So yes, you can do it. I think it would be pretty easy, and it would probably be pretty cool. So choose your choose your favorite and your best whiteboarding tool and display it as a screen share. That would work great. Is Webinar Jam going away? Randy reposting a question. I don't know that Webinar Jam is going away. I haven't heard anything about that. I'd be shocked if they, and profoundly disappointed if they did. So if you have a link or if you have a story to share where you've heard that, Randy, please share it with me here in the chat. I'd love to know. Okay. Paul, Podcast Heroes asking, Vid Blaster is a good vMix alternative, or OBS. Okay, so as far as these other switcher apps, OBS is the Open Broadcast Studio, is a free option. It's a lot more difficult to use than any of these other tools. It's powerful, and if you want to learn to use it, you can do an awful lot with it. It will do most of what we're talking about today, but your learning curve is going to be a lot greater. So it's an option, but I choose not to use it. I find it I find using a tool like Ecamm a joy to use, whereas OBS I'm always like on a knife's edge as to whether or not I'm doing things right. So there we go. Okay, Randy, why do you ask if Webinar Jam's going away? Okay, so there we go. Any idea how much the new Ecamm monthly subscriptions will be? I do. I should know that because we've talked about it. But maybe Glenn or Ken can put a note in. But it's coming soon. It's going to be a pretty reasonable price. I can't remember. I think it's $15 a month. I think that's going to be the base price, but I'm not positive. But it's going to be right in the range that you'd expect to pay for a tool like this. PF Warrior, doing interviews with an iPhone. What are the must-haves? Good microphones. Just as far as that's concerned. Oh, Glenn wants to come on. You're taking a chance, Glenn. Okay, I'm bringing Glenn on. Okay, let me just switch to Glenn here. Let me add him here. Just a minute. Oh, just a minute. I have to add you as a... Wait a second. I got to bring you...
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Maybe we can do an audio.
Oh, you can come in audio. That might be safer. Yes. So they were asking, you were on to answer the pricing question?
Yeah, the new subscription version of Ecamm is going to have a basic and a pro edition. The basic's going to have a ton of features. It's really going to be the core version, and we're looking at, I think it's $15 a month, and then we're doing the typical thing where if you pay annually, you save about 20% paying upfront for the whole year.
Excellent.
And then the pro version is $25 per month, and for that you get a bunch of more professional production features like virtual webcam
Green screen.
The green screen, the basic green screen is actually going to be in the basic version. We love that feature so much. We're so excited about it. So you'll get a basic green screen functionality in the regular version.
Okay.
And someone was asking in the comments about the ability to use Ecamm Live with something like a Google Hangout or a web chat. And that made me think of the virtual camera that we're adding. It's so cool. So you can, if people are familiar with what a virtual camera means, this is like a little plugin that shows up as a camera in all your Mac apps and browsers. But it's actually not a camera. It's actually the output from Ecamm Live, if you follow that.
Yeah, so let me paint a scenario. So it'll be a bit of a mind bender. So if you wanted to take the Ecamm Live setup with all of the graphics and overlays and the split screen with Skype and all of that stuff, and say present it into you wanted to use it in Zoom. For example, Zoom doesn't do the picture-in-picture that we were being asked about that Amy Porterfield did with her slides or that I had today when I was delivering the slideshow. Zoom doesn't allow that. Zoom just gives you full screen. You can actually use your Ecamm Live output as your Zoom input as you go out to your Zoom webinar. Does that make sense? Oh, it's crazy. It's mind-bending, but it's very cool.
It's pretty nice. I mean, so you can do a Skype call or a Zoom call or a Google Hangout and then bring in the green screen, bring in the titles and the graphics, camera switching, all through Ecamm. So it's pretty nice.
I just saw a question that I have to grab a link for because I want to take advantage of this. Sorry, guys. Just a minute. So there was a question here. If you were to purchase Ecamm Live now, are you grandfathered in on the pricing? What an interesting question.
Yeah, we love our users. We just we've been selling this product for over a year now. We have a ton of customers, an awesome beta group, and we're really excited to say that if you own Ecamm Live now, you're grandfathered in. We sold you a lifetime license, and that's what you're going to get. So you'll have a perpetual license for Ecamm.
And I just put the link in. That's Steve's affiliate link. Sorry, I took advantage of that. But it's my webinar. It's your tool, but it's my webinar.
Nice.
Good stuff. So, just going through. Okay, so the question about Webinar Jam was somebody who was misunderstanding what was coming from a previous webinar. You're probably crossing over. We've been talking a lot about the future of Evernote, so you probably got confused between those two. And they're both, I think, going to be fine. So there we go. So Money Rules was asking, so what do current users of Ecamm, you're going to be notified when they switch over to the new service, and but you will have access to you will still have access to the new version when it comes out.
Yeah, it'll come through as an automatic update We're just putting the finishing touches on it this week.
Glenn's audio is louder than Steve's, and I think I can adjust that here. I can adjust that in the monitor, can't I? There we go.
You should see a Skype slider.
Yeah, I got it
in the
right
sound
there.
levels.
I just brought you down a little bit. There you go. So that's good to know. There we go.
Don't forget that you can add the comments to the broadcast. That's kind of a neat, when you're doing a Q&A, you can kind of bring in...
I can?
Oh yeah, so in the comments,
there it is,
in
right
the
there.
comments window, you can either click add to broadcast or just drag it over.
There it is. So that was one of the things that I was talking about that should have been there. Thanks for pointing that out. That's one that I'd forgotten about. So Shireen asks, as a PC user, can I purchase Ecamm now until I move to a Mac? You can, but then it'll just be sitting there waiting for you.
Yeah, so click add the broadcast on her question.
I did.
And oh wait,
There's
I
a delay.
forgot my video is delayed.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm just looking at it here. Yeah, there it is. I can see it there. So that tells us how long the delay is too, as well. Okay, so we should buy now to get grandfathered in, Tom? Yes, you probably should. Here's the link again. I will put the link in one more time. There we go. I hadn't even thought about selling a bunch today, but that's a good idea. I'm sure you guys are happy with that. Okay, folks, I think we're going to wrap things up. We're 20 minutes over, and I've got I think the guys and I are going to have a chat about me buying new hardware, because I think it's about time. I've been thinking about buying a Mac Mini for a long time and seeing if I can live on the new Mac Mini, which is, I was holding off maybe for the new Mac Pro to come out, but maybe it's time. That was hard to take this morning, but
Well, I mean, the computer you have it's an amazing system. The Mac Pros that Apple made back in the day,
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's just when you're asking it to do multiple real-time video encodes, it gets a little dicey.
Yeah.
And I think it was just saying, "Oh my goodness, these frames are so late. I don't know if I should send them to YouTube because they're from a second ago."
Yeah.
You know.
I hear you. Okay, listen, we're going to wrap things up. So I'm going to let everybody go. I don't know what the replay is going to look like. I'm going to check it out, but we'll be sending you a follow-up email with all of the replay. To everybody that participated, thank you so much. You guys were awesome. Your patience and the fact that nobody complained about anything was just amazing. At least if you did complain, I didn't see it. And Glenn and Ken, thank you guys so much. You guys have built an amazing piece of software with Ecamm. And as you know, it obviously... regardless if you want to do webinars or if you want to do live streaming, it's a tool that all Mac users are just going to benefit from for a long time to come. So thank you so much for that. Okay, folks, I got to figure out how to end. Oh, there it is. There's a finish button. Next week, we're going to be talking online storage stuff. I got myself a new NAS, and I'm going to be talking about what's a NAS? A network area storage, network something storage. It's a big-ass storage device talking about backing up, archiving all of your stuff, and also serving media to your whole home. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week. But links will be in the follow-up email. Glenn, Ken, thank you guys so much. Till next time, folks. Have fun storming a castle.